Stu, can you give me an update on what you have with the NFL and everything else?
NBA.
China's changing, and NBA, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a really increase in the aggressiveness of China over even just the past few weeks. The ridiculous NBA saga with Daryl Morey, who is an NBA general manager for the Houston Rockets. And just to put an emphasis on this, because he tweeted, I support Hong Kong, support democracy, was just obliterated by not only the league, his owner, other owners. How dare you insult the People's Republic of China? And the wonderful Communist Party was essentially the response. Now, after a real blowback from Americans saying, wait, what are you guys doing? You're siding with the Chinese government here? There was a little bit of a step back yesterday. Adam Silver, who is the commissioner, released a statement that I thought was really weak, frankly, that said, well, we're not going to crack down on people's personal views if they're employees of the league, which was exactly what they had done for the past few days. He did make a statement and said a little bit more clearly yesterday that we understand that he had a viewpoint, and we're not going to get involved in whether he's right or wrong. So there was a little bit of an improvement in the NBA's position yesterday. This did not help the opinion of China, however, who then not only has been taking down posters around the cities for the games that were scheduled there. They're not airing them. They have a streaming service there that is not airing the games. There's a big pushback there, and this is coming to a major head. And you get the sense that South Park was right. China basically is controlling multiple, large portions of our economy because they can hold us at gunpoint. And if you think this is bad, if you look at the way the NBA has reacted, it's going to point you to what Glenn has been talking about for a million years on how they could do this with our entire economy.
So I want to take you there. First of all, let's just remember that something's wrong with our banking system. I just sent something to Bowie, one of our producers, in the control room. If you could open that up and put that chart up. This is something that Stu found very interesting yesterday, and you found this chart, I think, in the Wall Street Journal, maybe?
It was a Wall Street Journal chart, yeah.
Yeah, and you said you've been talking about this quiet bank bailout for a while. I just saw a graphic on it, and it totally changes everything.
Yeah, can you explain exactly? Because
so this is the
very
repo,
complicated.
Yeah, very complicated. Yeah. This is the repo market, and what happens is every bank has to have a certain amount of money, in their coffers when they close every night for the overnight. And sometimes they're short. They might be short $5 million or whatever it is, and so they borrow money from the other bank, and they'll say, "Hey, we're short something. Can we just sell you these treasuries, or you give us a loan based on these treasuries, and we'll pay you 1% for the 24 hours, or it's usually about 8 hours." And they're like, "Fine." And so it happens all the time. The Fed doesn't usually get involved. Now, it used to prior to 2008, but it wasn't a very big deal. You would just go to the Fed, and the Fed would take your asset, and they would give you a loan, and blah, 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 blah. It's standard. However, not what's been happening. What's been happening since the oil fields went on fire, you will see, now if you happen to be watching the blaze, let's describe this for our radio listeners. You will see that the beginning of this chart starts in 2005, and it is marked in billions of dollars. So you will see that the Fed was bailing these banks out, or lending money to these banks every night, between 25 and 48, is this in billions? Yeah, $1 billion, okay, every night. And it just rotates. You give it back the next day. You will see that in 2008, when Bear Stearns went belly up, you will see that it went up to $125 billion every night. And we all know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crisis situation.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Then they were bailed out, and it went to almost zero every night.
For a long, long time. What, almost 10 years?
10 years.
10 years of $0.
Zero. And then on September 18th, for the first time, so it's a kind of like a heartbeat graph with one big spike up to 125, for the Bear Stearns thing. And then it goes almost flatline all the way to zero for 10 years.
Which is the best case scenario
Right.
for this particular measure.
Then on September 18, all of a sudden it spikes up to 75 billion. Then by September 25th, it's at 105 billion. And then by October 2nd, it's 181 billion.
More than it was during the 2008 collapse.
A lot more. It was about 130 was the very top for one day. And then it kind of spiked back down. This is 181 billion, and it's still going on. So we don't know what's going on with our banks. We have no idea. Now, let me give you how this ties into China. We are already in a precarious situation. I told you at the beginning that trade wars always follow a certain pattern. And when the world is on edge, that pattern always ends in war. For instance, what was the Boston Tea Party?
Yeah, basically a trade war. Yeah.
Trade war, okay? Trade wars between countries, when countries are in conflict, that's usually the last step. And here's what happens. The first step is there's some sort of political crisis, and that leads to some sort of a banking crisis. Now, we had that. We have our political crisis going on, and we also had our banking collapse in 2008. The next step always is the governments step in to bail their banks out, and they start to devalue their money. They start to just print money. Well, we've done that. Then, because other countries begin to devalue theirs, look overseas, look at what everybody is doing, the trade imbalances start to go crazy. And that's when trade wars start. That's the last step before war, is a trade war. And there's a few reasons for it. Trade wars usually get nasty and nationalistic. And so you start saying, well, we're not in this with them and they're not in this with us. And you start throwing barbs back and forth, and it spirals out of control. And World War I, World War II, both started by trade wars. Now, here's the next step. Here's the latest in our trade war. Now, this has been leaked, and these people who leaked this should be found. I mean, I really believe the White House is a sieve. And we are leaking things for political reasons that are very bad. So here's what we do know. I want you to recall that in prior programs, we noted that the Chinese printed 51 trillion US dollars in their money and used a portion of that to invest in Western and US stocks and bonds. These were off-balance sheet holdings per their own financial stability report in 2018. So they reported this, but it was off their balance sheet. They printed $51 trillion. So if we gather up all the cash in the entire world, every yak and every clam and every dollar and every pound, we take all of it, that is $50 trillion. So they printed more than what the entire world has out in circulation. Half of that went between 15 and 24 trillion is the estimate from the Bank of International Settlements that the Chinese now bought in U.S. stocks, bonds, and real estate. This according to their 2018 report. Marco Rubio introduced a bill in the Senate early this year requiring foreign holders of U.S. equities to report ownership structures, a backdoor way for us to know who owns the companies, who owns the trusts, who owns the LLCs that are making this investment. The bill, for some reason, most likely China, never made it out of committee. We speculated at the time that it was possible that President Xi from China was weaponizing our own financial system against us, enabling him to crash the U.S. economy just by hitting a sell button. If they have 24, I want to make sure this is right. Yes, 15 to 24 trillion dollars invested in U.S. stocks and bonds. If he hits sell, we have a major depression on our hands. So something happened yesterday that is very important. Yesterday, it was leaked that the Trump White House may be looking into limiting Chinese investment into pension funds and mutual funds, which would indicate that perhaps the speculation on China dumping or having the ability to dump trillions of dollars and crashing our system may actually be real. We know they printed the money. We know they intended on putting it into Western and U.S. equities and bonds, but we don't know for sure because everything was purchased offshore. It's all off books. So we need to know. Having China limit their investment into pension funds and mutual funds is going to, probably piss them off, but I don't have a problem with that. But it also it's another indication that we are preparing for something, because there also was another significant thing that the president did yesterday. Do you have my main prep sheet? The one that was all highlighted? Shoot. There was something called open skies that Barack Obama signed in as law. And I remember when he signed it in, it was atrocious. It is one of the worst things I've ever heard any president do as far as our security. Do you remember open skies, Stu?
Yeah, I remember talking about it.
Okay, so open skies was, our skies are open. Any country can fly any plane over us, and we don't have a problem. No, I have a problem. I have a problem. I don't want your Russian military jets flying over the United States of America. I don't want the Chinese to be able to fly over the United States of America unless we give them the ability to do that and tell them, yeah, okay, what are you bringing in? Why are you flying over this space? Okay, come on into our airspace. So yesterday, we lifted the open skies law. That, I believe, is really good. The question is, why and why now? You know, if this was something that was, something that he had said, I really think this was a bad law and I want to get rid of this, but we haven't heard him talk about it. That's a strategic move. Why did he do that? Again, I think he did the right thing, and I think he did the right thing on China. I'm not for trade wars. They're dangerous. However, China is more so. And Donald Trump is the only one that has been willing to stand up to China. When we had George Bush in office, we kept saying, what are you doing? And he would just say, oh, you know what? Okay, so they're poisoning our dog food. Yeah, they're also making all of our medicine. Almost all antibiotics are made in China. That's not a good thing. If China decides to close doors, are we prepared? I believe the White House is beginning to prepare us for those things, which again is a good thing, but it is another warning sign that things are getting hotter and hotter in this cold trade war. Just keep calm and carry on. Know the information. Don't panic. Just make sure that you are mentally and economically prepared for what may come our way.